Anдрій Колодюk is the serial entrepreneur and venture capital investor. He is the founder and managing partner in A Ventures Capital Venture Fund, which was launched in 2012, focused on early-stage IT and web-related projects. In August 2014, Anдрій has initiated a foundation of UVCA, Ukrainian Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, and in November 2014, he was selected as a chairman. Vенді Дент is the founder and CEO of Cinemers, a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader and a coder. She is also an award-winning filmmaker and highly awarded speaker, the winner of the Best Public Speaker in Australia's capital, state finalist as Australia's Youth of the Year and a guest speaker at Harvard, Stanford, Columbia and Berkeley universities, the World Economic Forum Summer Davos, and tech conferences from the US to the Middle East.
Hello, my name is Anдрій Колодюk, and it's my pleasure to actually host today our guest from Australia, Vенді Dent. Hi. She is actually first time here in Ukraine, and I remember we met first time like a few years ago, and we spoke about Ukraine, and here you are.
We did, that's right.
Yeah.
Andrew's very convincing. He said to come. Yes. Well, I'm a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, which is a very high honor, and I was selected because I had been showing important films about human rights issues, which is my background, and I was visiting scholar at the world's top film school in Hollywood. But at the same time, I'd started developing a new venture in media tech. So I'm now very proud to be able to call myself a media tech entrepreneur as well, which is what brought me to Ukraine, to Kiev and Odessa in a few days.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But how do you define yourself in terms of the time you spend? Are you more the filmmaker, civil society leader, YGL, now the entrepreneur because you just launched your startup?
Yes, I don't really define them separately, you see, because even being a filmmaker is being an entrepreneur. Being a producer of content is also very entrepreneurial, very tough. And also my films and my platform are about civic leadership, and my venture is definitely a for-profit venture that I hope will be a unicorn, but it's grounded in social impact ideas. So for me, I don't distinguish them, although I probably should for my business card and title. But I think the most important ventures in the world have impact, right? I mean, they're things that make a difference.
Before visiting Ukraine, okay, what was your expectations? What did you know about Ukraine?
Well, because I knew there were all these country problems with politics, I think, to be honest, I expected almost to see a war zone. I mean, it's crazy, but if you want to talk the truth, our subliminal ideas, I expected to come to a city that was really struggling and very difficult. And I remember my last experience of Eastern Europe many years back now, but was being in Bucharest, and it was very dark and gloomy city, and it was a depressing place. I mean, I'm glad I got to visit briefly, but I thought the same somehow. And then I came here, and it's been really wonderful. I was saying to people, I do know there are problems, but if I didn't know intellectually of these problems, I would be in Kiev and thinking there are no problems at all.
I see. So basically you thought, because this is how Ukraine is portrayed, via media, that this country in the war, right? Because you see all these terrible things, but all of a sudden you came to Kiev, and what actually impressed you most when you just came in? What was your first experience?
Well, the people for a start, and I mean, I speak a lot about women and women in tech, and the first thing I noticed was how many smart, amazing women were coordinating and organizing, and everyone that I meet, every venue, there's been women, and people respect women and appreciate them, and I never had this feeling that I was a low-class or second-class citizen here, and that was a very deep but real impression, which was a wonderful thing. And yeah, the city itself is really very beautiful. The churches and the colors, even the blue with the gold. I love the blue is very soft pastels and like the sky, but also is a happy feeling, and then the gold is so sparkly but royal. And you know, I remember being in other countries where they have the Baroque feeling, and in Russia it's very disturbing, almost very beautiful, the Baroque, but it's a dark, disturbing feeling. And here there is almost a cheerfulness about the country and the attitude and the colors. Yeah.
Are the Ukrainians different from because you travel around the world, right? How can you describe if Ukrainians any different?
More open, actually, which surprised me. And Australians, we're naturally quite open people, and we say perhaps too much, too frankly, but most people, you get a feeling they're quite reserved. But I've had a feeling here of that openness, and the country itself seems to be in this very new time where the country is opening up. So maybe I'm sensing that and picking it up. But it's a very good thing, particularly for our worlds of technology, to have that open-mindedness. And that is actually different because, for example, in Silicon Valley, it has the roots of the New Age movement and the hippies, but sometimes the thinking isn't very open-minded.
Okay.
It's very strategic, and Silicon Valley has its own formulas, but everything has its boxes, and you're defined in certain ways. And I think this open-minded attitude that I found here and from you and other people is very promising. Yes, yes.
So you felt freedom here, right?
I did. I felt freedom, and there's that curiosity, that energy, and that interest in the future, whereas I suppose, too, I was expecting a nation that is traumatized, and I'm sure there is trauma,
right. It is.
But you don't have a feeling that the country and the people are broken. I suppose you've had a revolution, and you've found spirit and energy, so you've got it as a strength, rather than a broken people. That's really exciting, yeah.
And so, how would you? I understand maybe it's too early for you, but
Sure.
in terms of suggestions, right? Because you're going to be here for one more week. But basically, we are always asking, what could be your suggestion? How we can actually build up on that change that happened 2 years ago during Maidan, right? Because that energy openness just happened pretty much recently, right? When country and nation actually realize that we are on our own, right? Nobody's going to help us except us. So what would be a suggestion how we can actually use this momentum and build up something in terms of positioning Ukraine globally as a new Ukraine, as we call it, because we're struggling with old Ukraine and the new Ukraine is emerging. So what would be your maybe short suggestions, how and what we can build up on that momentum?
Yes, well, I think you've shown a spirit and a resilience, and I think you can present Ukraine as an example of a country that has been transformative and has been pioneering. And for example, in the US, there is so much talk of women's rights and women in tech. And I think you can show Ukraine has been leaders, and we have so much respect for women, and we put them forward, and we can be an example here. And particularly even in a very specific way, I've spoken to people in the past that when you're a woman trying to outsource technology, it's like going into a car mechanic as being a woman, and all of a sudden, the price rises and you get this attitude and you don't get any follow-up. And I think that the Ukraine business can really say, we are so excited to be working with you, and we want to move forward and champion what you're doing, and you're going to get a lot of business. And you don't get that in the Silicon Valley area and in other markets. It's about showing that we are people that are courageous, and we are ambitious, and we have this spirit, and we're showing an example of a country that has transformed. I mean, I learned even about this police force being totally changed, and that's remarkable. I mean, that's really remarkable. I wonder if the US would ever contemplate that.
Well, you've seen what happened in Auckland recently,
exactly,
right?
The US has such an issue with the police, and then you have in the Ukraine a whole new police force. So I think you should brag about this a lot more internationally even, and say, hey, look how much we have achieved. And I was speaking last night saying that in around 2014, I was in Cambodia, which was trying to have a revolution of sorts, and we had the Arab Spring faltering, and it was really quite a moment last night when it dawned on me that there was such a failure of revolutions, and Ukraine is one of the very rare examples of a revolution that stuck. Yes, let's hope, right? And that's something to brag about. So I think I didn't know enough about Ukraine, and that's partly why I wanted to come and I am quite worldly, but even then I felt I have no idea what happened in Crimea, and I feel embarrassed about this. Partly, I suppose it happened so quickly, but I think you can definitely try to reach the world more to talk about what's going on.
Right. That's why we are actually inviting such leaders like you to actually spread the word about the Ukraine and find some partnerships globally.
Yeah.
But coming back to your film experience.
Yes.
How actually got into making movie? What actually inspired you? How did it happen?
It's a very good question. You know, I actually like to joke that first I was suggested to do a film degree by a friend, and I said, you know, I'm not interested in this Hollywood rubbish. You know, I do theater.
Okay,
and
theater.
I really resisted film, and because at heart I always saw myself as a writer, and I got involved in theater, and I suppose I was a bit of an artistic snob, and I wanted to do important, good things. In fact, I'd always been interested to be a journalist, but my father had said, don't go into this because, you know, the journalists just have to cover almost public relations. They don't get to write about what's important. So I always ended up taking a step to the left and doing things that I felt were so deep and important. With media, you really can create very powerful moments and messages, and it's recorded forever, whereas theater is so transient. You have a performance and, oh, but my friend didn't come and you missed it.
Yeah, you missed it, right?
So I love that we could capture things and they're there, and every time you watch a film, you can usually find new meanings if it's a good film. So it was very powerful, and I quickly started doing more and more films that were not the kind of films to get the grant money because they were too provocative or
but that
too...
was the documentary one, right? That was documentary one.
Yes, I did documentaries. And
right.
So I ended up in Zimbabwe, and I was actually asked to try to get some footage out of the country because the local journalists couldn't. And there was no freedom of speech and no freedom of media. And it was a good example where it was literally a law. You can't film. I didn't have a visa.
Okay.
But by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, no, that's
so you did it.
Not right. So I took a very big risk, and it was very dangerous. But I smuggled footage out of the country in my makeup bag. We were literally outrunning the Secret Service.
Wow.
It was terrifying. At one point, I was in a car and we were stopped at a roadblock by the Secret Service to search the car. It was many of the most terrifying moments of my life. But I got out, and then I made this film because I really wanted to show the story of these people.
Right.
They had their friends disappear, and it really shocked me that I couldn't then get my film seen. No one seemed interested. And so I began this journey, I suppose, of trying to find a way that as media creators, we can actually have talented filmmakers have an opportunity, and have important films have an opportunity to be seen, right? Rather than the Hollywood system, you don't get an opportunity.
Right, and this leads me to another question in terms of how the movie industry is changing, and is that about distribution, right? Exactly. Now it's become much easier in a sense to actually shoot the movies, but then it comes to the distribution. How are you going to deliver it to the world? How are you not going to lost in kind of, you know, in the crowd?
Right, yes, we have this deluge of content, and we have this problem, 100 channels and nothing to watch. And then it became 300 channels and 1,000 channels. And now if you think about the internet, in a sense, every website is another channel. Right. So yes, we had this digital revolution from cameras, and people thought this will be the beginning of change because everyone has a voice through their media. Right. No, you don't have a voice if no one can find your media. Exactly, and this is just the reason why the world actually find out about what happened in Ukraine during the Maidan, because the movie Ukraine is on Fire become available on Netflix. That's the only way. If that would not happen, the global audience would be still in the dark, right? Because they would not actually judge, but that happened. So that distribution is very important, right? And now, actually, speaking of the maybe new motivation for you, that actually what's happening right now, the many trying to actually find the news stories in Ukraine, okay, in terms of this transition, and to show to the world why is Ukraine is now named the kind of black swan, in a sense, because what happens in the Ukraine right now, it has an impact on the all global activities worldwide, okay? And many people realize that,
right now. That's why they're coming over to Ukraine. But the question is, how are you going to show to the world that Ukraine is not a separate territory? What happens here have a huge impact on everything in the world. Actually, how we're going to live in the new world, it's something happening here. So the question is, how are you going to actually show it to the world, right?
Right, and you need the Ukrainian people to have the opportunity to present their identity.
Right.
And what I learned, you know, I'm new to Ukraine learning, but the Russian control of the media here meant that a lot of, before Crimea, a lot of the TV was Russian content.
Right.
But then because of the change from Crimea, it was no longer okay for your channels to be showing Russian content. People didn't want to see something from Russia. So it's given a window now where it pressures people to have Ukrainian content. So now there's a chance for Ukraine producers, meaning media producers as well as tech, to show who you are as a people, show your own identity, and then that will help so much.
Right, but the international journalists now are busy with other hot areas, right?
Yes.
Syria, what happened, terrorists that happened in the Europe, that is outrageous. Of course, they're busy with internal stuff, so they kind of forgot about Ukraine for the moment, because it's perceived to be kind of freezed, the conflict, right? They're not even aware that, for example, just a month ago, like 37 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed, right? And that so this is still happening, right? And yeah, it's 700 kilometers away when we speak right now from Kyiv, right? But still, it's still happening. So the question is how you actually get involved foreign international filmmakers to actually come back and, hey guys, I understand that you are now busy what's going on currently, but let's think how what's going on in Ukraine is going to impact, because actually I believe that what happened in the world is the Ukraine and the Russia was a starting point. It's just the consequences of it, but it's still coming here. This is the center of that kind of epicenter, right? What's happening, and so you need to come back to see why it's having an impact and actually to show it to the world. But it's been kind of forgotten.
Yeah. You know, that's very interesting, because I think you have to find why it really matters to the West, and it's a very good time to give this message that, for example, in America right now with the elections, there is increased talk about accountability and transparency and corruption, conflict of interest. And we had in the last few months, even Panama Papers showing this global ecosystem of corruption and showing that the money moves, And if they're reporting right now about Panama, they've missed the point because the money moved. So I think that the message is that Ukraine is one example of the corruption of the system, and that this is of relevance to the whole world to stop this, you know, outflow of corruption and kleptocracies. And I say this really from experience, because I filmed in Zimbabwe, and I had for many years the advocates saying, but you know, we have so many problems with our human rights, people don't listen and understand, and it was crushing to realize people didn't.
As I know, you have a startup, so I'm very interested in how you come up with the idea, what it takes to actually build a startup for you for the first time, as I know.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Okay, so how did I come up with the idea? Well, a few years ago, I was in Silicon Valley, and there was a big movement at that time for mapping. And this was before wearable technology, and now we have AI and all sorts of other exciting things. But at that time, there was mapping. And I was very interested in the idea of human rights films. And I thought, imagine if we could look into a satellite map and then see the story, because we have this obsession with data, particularly mapping data. But to me, the data is not always telling a story. In fact, one of the fellow young global leaders is one of the chief CIOs, chief data officer of the White House, and he chatted with me and he said, yeah, we have an expression for a data bomb, right? When you just have this pretty graphic, but people go, oh wow, look at the data, and then they click to the next window. And I felt media is the story that we need to put with the data to give meaning, but also we can have a story about Ukraine that people don't believe unless it's backed up with the data, the figures, you know. So we need both. And so I had this idea to literally map movies. And no one had done this at all. To map movies, to actually put them on a map, and people can browse through the world and open a new window into a world of stories, 6-7 billion stories.
But how you link movies to the mapping? For
So,
example, what would be an Ukrainian map?
Yeah. So, for example, if someone's in Ukraine and passing Maidan Square, my current, MVP is to get an alert to your phone or your watch that says you are at the scene of this documentary or this drama. So Maidan Square, I'm sure there will be, I think there's 13 feature films right now about what happened there, but more media that could be added to that.
Right.
Or if you're wanting to, surf through the world from the US and look in Ukraine, you would have these films pop up. So a way for people to find movies they would be interested in. So geolocating the movies was the beginning, and Harvard was very keen on this. I actually had spoken at the Harvard Kennedy School Carr Center for Human Rights, and they loved this and said, we'd like to house this at Harvard on the Harvard website. What an amazing opportunity.
Sure.
Can you just, get some venture capital and come back? This if I just run away and get some VC money on the weekend. And I thought it would be easy because Harvard was keen.
Right.
But I needed some help to develop the platform, and I had my website growing, but to do all the geolocating.
Right.
And it evolved from there, and then I got excited about wearable technology, and fortunately I started pivoting and growing the platform because after I pitched about mapping movies, and I spoke about that at the Rockefeller Center, and I pitched it at the top tech summit in the world at Web Summit, and Financial Times had me. Then Periscope came out with Twitter and started mapping the live streaming.
Live streaming, right.
So since then I've been a little bit more, worried like what other brilliant ideas I might pioneer that someone else just can do quicker and bigger. But yeah, I'm very proud that I was the first person pitching this. Not saying they stole it, but we put in the ether these wonderful ideas, right?
It's the first to market, right?
First to market, and I didn't have the position to be able to get all of the human rights filmmakers putting their films up, but it was the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey. And then I started learning about wearable technology, and I got very excited about the idea of being able to know people's emotional response to movies, and where that inspiration came from too. Around this time, I had a 1-minute film that I'd made that was premiering around the world, and in 1 minute, this movie literally has made people laugh uproariously. It's made people sob. A friend of mine watched it in a Chinese restaurant over dinner and was sobbing in 1 minute.
Okay.
And it's made even someone at the end of the film in the cinema scream out, "Jesus Christ!"
Okay.
And it's a very powerful 1 minute, but it's a very provocative film of a very controversial subject that was never going to get an Oscar nomination or a big award because there's a lot of politics. And at the same time, the USC Film School, the top film school in the world, shows that film to their students studying visual effects because it was made without a camera, without any effects, without actors, without a voiceover. It was literally made on a screen record.
But let me understand how you actually linked to all those mapping for the movies.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand it. Like
sure. Yeah.
Just it's a location based. You just go there and you see some movies relevant into this location by shooting, by maybe actors, somehow some angle to that territory. But how that actually linked to the emotional stuff? Yeah. How's that linked? What is the use case for the user?
But yes, exactly.
By using your application.
Yes. So my idea was to show how someone would respond so that a user an audience can find films that maybe were really powerful that wouldn't otherwise make it to the market, like this one. If there was a rating of how much it had given someone a jump to their heart, it would actually give them a different way of choosing movies. So for example, a horror film, can increase someone's heartbeat about 29% for The Shining. It shows it's a very scary horror movie. Whereas a film that maybe is a new student horror film, a little scary, might increase your heart maybe 5%, I'm guessing. So this is actually a different way of judging powerful movies. So it's separate to the mapping, but my idea was that if we could choose films from other ways, like finding a movie on the map, then also how can we know what is a very emotional movie. So if I can show this 1 minute was very gripping, it has a very emotive impact, it might go viral. And it might otherwise not get chosen by Hollywood because of the Hollywood system isn't always about the best films.
Right.
It's about who you know.
Right. So basically, you are introducing the new metrics. Like, for example, in comparison with IMDb, you have like ups and downs in terms of people like it or dislike some movies. So basically, you're introducing the different barometer system, how you actually rate the movies based on the emotional, right?
That's right.
And this way technology comes to actually rate my emotion. For example, if I laughing during the comedy, so it's kind of increasing my grades.
Exactly.
And it shows to everyone that everybody was laughing. So that means it's a good movie.
That's right. Because you can't really fake that. And those systems, people vote, you know, 1 month later, a year later, you might give it 5 out of 5 because it had Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie. But what does that mean? Whereas this is biodata. But getting back to what we are talking about, I'm very excited about this idea because it's using wearable technology and data to fight corruption. I mean, this is getting back to our whole talk about Ukraine.
It's a different twist.
It's a different twist. But if we think about the film industry, the films that you said about Ukraine might have a very little chance to get to Netflix.
Right.
Because it didn't win at Sundance. And maybe it didn't get to Sundance because they had 5,000 films and they've never heard of this filmmaker.
Right.
So, you know, you have to play the right game. You have to get to the right film festivals. You have to be in the right cocktail party.
So basically, you're also building a platform for independence movies?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Now I get it.
So it's about the quality of the movie. It's about the film, not the filmmaker. So if you have a very powerful film, you still have a democratic opportunity. So it's about changing the system. Whereas if you have the system right now, there could be an award-winning filmmaker who's won at Sundance and has the movie star, but it really doesn't impact anyone's heart. It doesn't make them laugh very much.
Okay. So you're actually saying that your system is much more objective in a sense because it's based on human reactions and human feelings rather than some kind of jury that could be subjective in many ways, right?
Yeah.
I see.
And that's what I'm experimenting with. We'll see. But I know this is factual. I mean, there's university data for research for many years beyond when I started thinking about this. That does prove we have emotional responses, obviously.
And you also mentioned wearables, but how your project is linked to the wearables? I guess to that Apple Watch?
Yes. Andrew's a very good interviewer. So yeah, what I'm doing is using the heartbeat response from the watch to show me my reaction.
This is how it's based.
And this is a beginning. I think as time grows and wearable technology, we have VR sets that they can see where you're looking, they can tell your sweat glands. And I was talking already in Silicon Valley about this idea that we can, you know, tell people's emotional response to the media as well as them finding a new way to be watching the media. And this is very classic for the film industry to have, you know, new cameras, new 3D, and now we have VR. But we have to get away from being obsessed with the content itself and the cameras to thinking, like you mentioned, about the content models. The digital revolution meant we could have more movies, but what does that mean unless the filmmakers can get them seen?
Sure.
So the business model is the point.
Right.
Yeah.
And you developing your startup, right? You have already MVP, and you also mentioned that you also are looking for some technical assistance. But I've heard that you also write the code. Is that true?
I did. I wrote the code. It's been crazy. Well, I couldn't get the little bit of funding to get the developers, and also they took so long to follow up. And I started thinking, you know, I think I can do this. And so literally, I went online and did online courses. And I mean, people say I'm very bright. I did, as a young child, even actually teach myself a bit to code, and maybe I have a knack at it, but I really enjoyed it. And so in the time it's taken me to get quotes back, I was actually learning how to code and do it myself, and I don't want to do that forever.
Right. But it's very Silicon Valley style, when actually founders also learn how to code, to actually understand how to interact with the team of the people, programmers, right, founders. and
I
so
think
on.
it's really important. I'm glad I
Yeah.
did, because to be able to direct a team and know about your business model and the tech, I think it's not just the CTO that needs to think about it. You have to have
Right.
an understanding. So I learned a lot doing that.
I see.
And then we think about coding, even I dream about it at
Right.
night.
But anything you're looking in Ukraine, maybe, in terms of any help and anything?
Yeah. I would love that. I mean, it was part of my reason of wanting to come,
Okay.
is to meet the people that would also be able to, be on team, or perhaps I could start up here, get the BC funding to be a Ukraine startup and then go international. Why not?
Okay, so it's both. You are gonna meet some venture capitalists here, right?
I hope so,
Investor.
yeah.
Okay, hope so. And also some people that exposed to the technology background, programmers, right? And
Yeah.
but you also only for the team of programmers, or maybe some team members.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're open to that as well?
That's right, because
Okay.
I've done this so far solo, and you can't run a business solo. You can launch an idea with help, but I think it's very hard for women, particularly, to find the co-founders. Often, as I said, even with technology, we can get sort of strung along a lot
Right.
more. And in Silicon Valley, I had developers wanting equity just to do a plugin, 2-3 hours work, and I thought, I'm not stupid.
Right.
You don't get a cut in this just for a few hours.
Sure.
So I think it does take longer, and here you have the teams and you have the talent, and I think you can outsource a team to help with the go-to-market and with
Right.
the product launch. I don't have to be doing everything myself.
Of course, because
and Kiev and Ukraine is a great place, I think, for people to consider that, right?
Right. The other YGL, global leader, like Mark Turrell, actually came here for the first time 2 years ago, right? We also showed him some opportunities, and he ended up actually building product from Ukraine, from Kiev, but he actually found the whole team.
Okay, right, exactly.
So it's already been done. It's been done many times. So hopefully you will also find the right people. And of course, I'm sure that here in Ukraine, many people now looking for the other co-founders with a global ambitions like yours.
Yeah.
Because in every team, right, it takes a few members that covering different parts of it, right? Some people covering sales and marketing, some covering the product development, right? Someone is doing some PR, and so it's going to be a mixture of the different competencies, right?
And you can't have every skill. I mean, I don't even see myself forever as being, the managing director, CEO of my company. I think I'm a better serial entrepreneur style person. I'm more visionary, but you don't have to be doing everything.
So they're more risk-taking, that's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think this heritage of technology and pioneering inventions is there, whereas Australia is a mining boom. It's a different thinking.
Old economy, as we call it.
Exactly. And so it's not that I was crazy, it's that, in California, they have that mentality like Steve Jobs, be crazy, it's genius. And here they have the same.
Right.
Yeah.
But tell me your main motivation. Why are you doing this? You want to change the world, or you want to make money, or both? What is your personal ambition?
Oh, it's always been changing the world, really. And I mean, I think we have to now start rewarding people so they can change the world more. If you don't have any money, you struggle to change a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was very enjoyable to talk to you, and thank you for sharing all your ideas. I frankly very wish you to find the team members for your startup.
Exactly.
So one day we're gonna hear about it. It's gonna be Australian, Ukrainian type of startup.
That's right. Yeah. Why not?
And also, I wish you to enjoy Ukraine. Maybe you will find some new inspiration in terms of the filmmakers part of your life, right? Actually to find some ideas, maybe to share with someone, to actually do something to show new Ukraine to the world. So enjoy, and I'm sure you're going to meet very creative people here. So enjoy your stay, and
thank you so much. Pleasure to be here, an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you next time.